Since we were talking about manufacturing, so over the years, how has technology evolved from a manufacturing standpoint?
Supply chains are all about how do you meet conflicting requirements that might seemingly appear to be divergent, but are actually not. How do I ensure your KPI and my KPI, which might seem seemingly divergent, we work together to deliver both of them in equal measure?
FMCG companies, you see a very stable pricing. The previous company, we had dynamic pricing. The raw material prices go up, the prices we show goes up. So how do you maintain that stability of prices over a larger period?
So my name is Sarthak. I lead early careers in campus for Reckitt. I did my MBA from HR in Accelerate Jamshedpur and got a chance to intern with Reckitt for my summers and was fortunate enough to get a PPO from the company, and last year I joined Reckitt as a management trainee in the HR function. Post that I've done around 3 or 4 stints across various domains of HR, and now I'm leading campus and early careers for Reckitt. So that's pretty much about me. So as I mentioned, we are here for Inside Reckitt's leadership, and for the same, we have an esteemed panel from Reckitt leaders. We have Mr. Pradeep Krishnamurthi, who is the Regional Supply Director for South Asia. And we have Mr. Pritam Anand, who is an alum of IIM Mumbai. He was an intern with Reckitt and then also a management trainee. And right now he's a national NPI manager for Reckitt. So let's give them a huge round of applause and let's start the session. Great. So let's start. So Pradeep, first of all, thank you for being here and agreeing to do this. So my first question is that, you've been with the supply vertical for 2 decades now, and you've had a stellar career across various domains in the function. So how did it all begin? I mean, when you were in the Delhi College of Engineering, was this something that was already on your mind that this is what you want to build your career in, or it was kind of a spontaneous decision for you? So how did it all pan out?
Okay, I think a lot of this happened as you go along. Yeah, and that's where I want to say, in many cases, is you can definitely have a plan, but I think what is more important is what you are doing in the present moment. Yeah, that's reality. So after I finished my engineering, I did what most people in Delhi from Delhi College of Engineering do, which is to join an automotive company in Delhi, which was Maruti. Partly also driven by personal circumstances. My parents were there, my father was not well, so I needed to work in Delhi. I did that for about 4 or 5 years, all into engineering, very different from supply chain, the supply chain part of supply chain, not the entire end-to-end supply chain. And it was an area where I think it set a lot of basics on engineering, but it was also something where it was focused on specialization. Yeah, so you had people who were specialists in what they did, but they did not have the breadth of what relevance it was having for their business. And then there's an opportunity for me to move into manufacturing. So I did engineering for soap, and then I moved into soup, literally into soup, because I used to then operate a factory, it used to be here in Bombay, in Airoli. And that's where my journey into manufacturing started. And as you get into manufacturing, you then start looking around, how do you impact the business that you work for? And that's how you expand into supply chain, customer service, all of that. 2 decades in supply chain, many different roles across manufacturing, supply chain, back to manufacturing, OTC and healthcare, normal FMCG products. That's what it was.
Great. I think that's a very inspiring journey. So Preetham, my next question is for you that, these guys are very fresh on campus, right? Just a couple of weeks. So when you are in a B school and you've just started, how do you get the clarity of the specialization that you want to choose? I mean, back in the day, you came to NITI, and at that time were you really clear about supply chain and logistics, what you want to do? And how can someone, let's say, who's a fresher just out of his or her undergrad, how can that person make that decision of the specialization?
To answer your question, Sarthak, fairly, in all fairness, no, I was not clear. I was not sure if I am getting into the right college, right specialization. I wasn't clear. And maybe in most of the decisions that we take in life, we are not. I had 3-4 check boxes. To see if these all things are, I'm able to tick them off or not. And basis that, the rest of it was leap of faith. So what did I have? I was very clear that I was getting into a premier institute. That was one. The other bit was that, of course, NITI had stellar placement records. And back then, one of the criteria, I'm sure everybody would have looked into placement records of campuses getting into. So that was another one. And lastly, I am a mechanical engineer. And when I was taking this decision, I was 21, 22 years old, fresher, no exposure to working anywhere. So I had this in mind, very narrow, I would say in hindsight, a very narrow perspective on things. So I was trying to associate that whatever I have invested in my 4 years of engineering, in mechanical engineering, I had some coherence between the course that I was opting for. So the course structure that we were taught here, I'm not sure what is the latest course structure now. It had a bit of industrial engineering, operations management, which we had done during our mechanical engineering. So these were three, broadly speaking, the check boxes that were falling in place, and rest of it was I taking that leap of faith. And I believe, whenever in life you must have taken that decision, opting for IIM Mumbai now, and you will take that decision opting for a company for summer internship or multiple other things. You'll always have that factor of leap of faith which you will have to take. Now, what happens, because whenever you're taking such decisions, you're transitioning into another world which you have maybe zero exposure to. You cannot account for the variabilities that the new world brings into. So that's the limitation of all your analytical decision making powers and all. So you have to let loose, and that's what you do. Sometimes it works, and in fact, if you have really put your might behind it, whatever decision you have taken, if you have put your might behind it, if you have put away the doubts that are there, and you have put all the strength in making that decision work for you, it always turns out to be good. And in hindsight, in my case, it has surely done. So yeah, that's about it.
Cool. So Pradeep, my next question is for you. That you've had a lengthy all-round career in supply. One thing that's not much spoken about, though, is the significance of plant roles and manufacturing roles in order to get on an all-round career in the supply function. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so as you talk of end-to-end supply chain, I think it encompasses 4 major pillars: plan, source, make, deliver, right? Plan is all about planning what you want. Sourcing is all about getting the materials that you want, manufacturing it and delivering it. And of all of these, I think manufacturing is an important part. I would not say it is the important part, but it is an important part. And for you to be able to deliver a good job either in planning or materials or in customer service, you need to know how your backend looks like. For a lot of modern supply chains, your manufacturing also determines your competitiveness, because a good lean manufacturing setup can actually give you significant competitive advantage. And therefore, it's important that you understand manufacturing. And when I say understand, it doesn't mean you go spend a week, come back and say, I know everything. It's about spending some time there, understanding the basic nuances, understanding choices that you make, choices across, what would you invest in? Would you invest in scale? Would you invest in flexibility? What would you do? And to give you an example, let's say you look at a product like soap or toilet cleaners, you probably invest in scale. You want the fastest line, biggest line, maximum output, etc. Get to a different field, color cosmetics, lipsticks. You don't need scale. You need complexity. Someone who wants a particular shade of brown, Revlon 021, You give that person 022 or 023, he or she is not going to pick it up. So it's also important. What kind of manufacturing backend do you have for you to leverage that in your supply chain and deliver customer service? It's important that you do at least a couple of years, 2-3 years in a plant environment. Understand. Second benefit, you also build friends. Friends who will come in handy when you're in trouble at the other end. So ask Pritam, whoever he interacted with during his training, so wherever his project gets stuck, they're just a phone call away.
Just a follow up on that, since we were talking about manufacturing. So, over the years, how has technology evolved from a manufacturing standpoint? And what are some of the technological shifts we are seeing in factories nowadays?
Historically, manufacturing used to be very, very manpower oriented. Right? Maybe you could call it a sweatshop. In other words, huge lines, lots of people, lots of manual actions. Today, you're seeing a lot of automation coming in, robotics coming in. You have large lines that produce significantly high volume, manned by very few highly qualified people. Why is that happening? As our country grows, it becomes more prosperous. You'll find less and less people to do mundane jobs. What are those mundane jobs? Putting bottles on a line. Think of any bottle in which a liquid is filled. The starting point is putting bottle on a line. Next job, picking up the filled bottles, putting it on cases. Moving those cases to a warehouse. Loading those cases onto a truck. Over time, technology has changed everywhere, where today you're able to have faster lines. The lines are so fast that unless you have literally an army of people, you won't be able to run them at full efficiency. There are also today, in terms of process benchmarking and quality, there are automated systems which will tell you, is your line working in the best situation? Is your process in control? Are you producing good quality products? What was your OE the last hour? What were your major breakdowns? Which part of the line is happening? Are these breakdowns happening? And also stuff like predictive maintenance. So looking at the vibration on a bearing, you could say, or the temperature, what is the health? Is it functioning normally? Or is there a potential of a catastrophic failure? The other part is across utilities and energy. I think with a big focus on sustainability, factories of today or factories of tomorrow will probably be carbon neutral factories working on renewable energy sources, recharging all the water that they withdraw from the ground, so on and so forth.
Great. So, Pritam, my next question is for you. That you were a summer trainee and then a management trainee with Reckitt after your B school. So, how important do you think are the summer trainee and the management trainee periods for the rest of your career? And especially after you've landed in a premium B school. And if you look in hindsight, do you still remember some of the insights you received as a summer trainee or a management trainee?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important are these exposures. I'll answer this question in two parts. One is about the summer trainee period and the other one about the management trainee period. So, I mean, the summer trainee exposure that one gets at B school, of course, it's largely seen as that you are getting recruited to a company is judging you, whether you are performing well or not. But actually, it's an opportunity to the student also to understand, to assess if the company is good enough for him or her. I mean, that's one of the major advantages. For somebody like me, as I mentioned earlier also, I joined as a fresher, so I did not had a lot of exposure into work, professional culture, setup, and all of those things. So internship gives you that sneak peek into an organization, as in how do companies operate, what are the day-to-day life and challenges for people who are working over there, what are their priorities, what do organizations want to achieve. So that's the 2 months of summer internship period gives you a lot of understanding of all those things. So everything that maybe in a year or something you have gone through the book comes to life in practical senses. So you get to know what is actually possible and what is not. And lastly, on this point, in the summer internship, of course, if you're getting the pre-placement offer in that particular company, So the relationship that you have built will come very handy down the line. But if you're not, I mean, that's not the end of the world, definitely. What you're gaining is that you're gaining exposure to two work cultures, two companies, two organizations. Wherever you'll go finally, you'll have an additional exposure to a different company which operates differently, which had different challenges. So your perspective broadens that way. Coming on to the management trainee period, I mean, first put this forward is that Reckitt is an organization where this management training program is perhaps more than 30 years old now. Not many organizations can claim that. I mean, and for such a program which has evolved for 30 years, it is maybe for the best of the students who are getting into now. They'll have the best exposure. So you are given responsibilities across all the functions. So what happens as a management trainee, you gain 360-degree exposure to the company, to the business. You understand what is the challenge for a person who is selling soap on road, the sales representative. And not many people, let's say a lateral who is hired in a company, maybe he or she is very good in his function, but might not have this exposure that a management trainee gains. And that really becomes, it's very advantageous. I cannot emphasize enough.
Pradeep, my next question would be for you, and more than an answer, it would be a cheat sheet for you guys, so do make a note. Very soon we'll be going to a lot of campuses for hiring summer interns and, for the profiles that emerge. What are the top things that you see in a candidate when you are assessing them for hiring as a summer intern?
I think the first thing we look at, and it's rather old-fashioned or conservative or whatever you might say, is honesty and transparency. If you don't know something, it's perfectly fine. I mean, at the end of the day, you're 20-year-olds. You'll work for another 30 years and gain knowledge. It's okay to say, I don't know. Give me time, a month, 2 months, 3 months. I'm confident I'll figure out what it takes to solve this question. Many times we come across candidates who try to bluff their way through. Maybe it's a strong word that I'm using, but at the end of the day, you should be clear on what you know. More importantly, you should be confident that you will pick up what you don't know with the right kind of exposure and time. That's the first thing. The second thing we look at is a kind of culture fit. Because as we said, ours is a company where you need to interact with a lot of people. So someone who enjoys working in teams will be a better fit versus someone who is more introverted, wants to do, tasks that are more individual oriented than team oriented. It doesn't mean either of the individuals are inferior or superior. It's about a culture fit. It's like food. Some of you like sweet. Some of you like salted stuff. Someone has a high preference for spice. Someone has a low preference for spice. It's the question of matching the food to your taste. Similarly, it's the question of matching the candidate to what we believe as an organization we are looking for in a candidate. That's the second. I think the last bit is also in terms of some bit of ambition. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Because at the end of the day, you need to have a view of why you want to do something, why you want a supply chain, why you want a Reckitt, why you want somebody else. It's also important that when you speak to people, you also do your own homework of the company. One of the normal questions that we ask, and as you said, this is a cheat sheet. The one question I always ask is, how many brands of Reckitt do you know? We have about 40 power brands globally. Well, I don't want to run this as a quiz. If you can't count at least 20, you don't know the company well enough where you are wanting to go in.
Great. And so, Pritam, you mentioned growth mindset as one of the elements of the culture. So, for someone graduating fresh out of a B school and venturing into the supply function, how does the growth trajectory look like in Reckitt?
Well, frankly speaking, it's to each their own. I mean, there are so many examples. I'll take examples of management trainees only. Some of them are factory managers. Some of the management trainees are leading functions globally at other markets, for example, UK, US, Amsterdam. So actually, it's up to you. What do you want to do? I mean, as I was explaining in the last answer, that's Reckitt provides you that freedom. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to excel into procurement? Well, you have all the global opportunities that you want. Whether you want to grow here in India, there are plethora of opportunities that you want. You want manufacturing, you want logistics, you want the other aspects of supply chain, you have to choose. But I mean, the bottom line remains is that performance has to be the primary thing. If you're performing well and whatever then you are asking for, then you're asking that with proper background to it, with proper backup to it, and you'll be provided for. That's how the growth trajectories are. In general, I mean, whatever you want to do, I'll summarize it that way.
So my next question is actually for the both of you that as part of your career, what do you reckon was one of the most difficult decision that you had to take as a supply professional?
See, at times you are faced with challenges. It could be divestments, it could be people, it could be closing factories, opening factories. There are two ways to look at it. One is to look at it emotionally to say it means you might impact livelihoods of people and therefore you don't want to do it and you then remain uncompetitive. The other way is to do it in a manner where you not just get your goals sorted, but you also ensure by, let's say, divesting it, and I'm picking up divestment as Pritam just mentioned that, you ensure you give the people and the site a better future. So there are many times you have that challenge. The second challenge, and I'll take the example of COVID, we needed to ensure that people who came into our plants and produced were taken care of. So it was about creating a huge infrastructure of providing food to everybody in the factory, 3,000 people, transportation, standby ambulance, hiring hotels to ensure if somebody needs to be quarantined, he or she can go there. And finally, it was to ensure we do not have a single loss of life. At the end of the day, all of this is fine. But I think the value of a human life is much more than the business top line that we can get, because you don't make the top line this year, you still have another year to make it. If you lose people, you won't get them back. Yeah, and therefore, that was an area where we went, we got people. People came to us because they trusted us. We ensured we took utmost care of them. We got them vaccinated as and when vaccines were available. At the end of it, we did not have a single fatality across the plants that we operated or across the supply chain that we operated. It was tough, but based on beliefs to say that we will ensure we do the best for our people because they are just doing the best for us. So these are probably two recent challenges that can come to my mind. And the other bit is supply chain and leadership is always about deciding on conflicting and tough choices. Should I have more inventory and therefore better service, or should I have less inventory, impact service? The answer is neither. Yes, supply chains are all about how do you meet conflicting requirements that might seemingly appear to be divergent, but are actually not. How do I ensure your KPI and my KPI, which might seem seemingly divergent, we work together to deliver both of them in equal measure?
Great. So I have one last question, but before that, let's break for a final Q&A. Yes, please.
Hi, sir. My question is how Reckitt as an organization identify which markets to pursue further, where to diversify?
I mean, like I answered earlier, it's always consumer insights led. I mean, you are always on top of what consumers want, where do they want it, and how do they want it, and basically you cater to that. That's as simple as that. Of course, a lot of complexities goes into it to solve for it, but to answer it simplistically, this is what it is. You identify needs and you cater to it.
Hello, sir. Myself, Hemant. We talked about the culture being an important part of the organization, how people drive it. So, from a supply chain perspective, while selecting or choosing a supplier, is culture a factor for it?
Okay, we work with people who work with us. That is one part. The second element of culture for a supplier is fairness towards employees. And therefore, we have a criteria of human rights and responsible business, where we ensure people are paid fair wages, they're given their weekly offs, they are given adequate rest between shifts, and that is an important parameter for us to select a supplier. So you can be a fantastic supplier, but if you don't treat your people right, it's a matter of time before Reckitt exits.
So it is not a Reckitt focused question, it is a supply chain question, procurement basically. So we know that procurement, the raw materials have a lot of fluctuation in prices. For example, you mentioned soda ash. So in my previous company, there was dense, light, and then soda ash needs to be imported. And it is various, things are very dynamic there. So basically in FMCG companies, you see a very stable pricing. The previous company, we had dynamic pricing. The raw material prices go up, the prices we show goes up. So how do you maintain that stability of prices over a larger period? So how do you cover that delta? What is the strategy that you use?
So in the whole consumer goods industry, I mean, it's not that the prices are stable and the raw materials are at stable prices. I'll take an example of palm oil. I mean, you would have heard a lot of news about it, that how prices shot up, how India is now planning to get into palm oil, palm cultivation and all. So, and how did the consumer goods industry react? I mean, what is good about this industry is that in some way or the other, that delta is passed on to the consumers. I mean, of course, it's not that all 100% of it is passed on. Some of it is also absorbed in our P&L, because the kind of P&L that FMCG companies work on, they have that room to absorb that. But at the same time, some of it is passed on to consumers also in multiple formats. I mean, the dairy milk that you eat today, and when you ate that 15 years ago, have you noticed the size change? That's how it's passed on to you. I mean, you do not realize at the face of it, but over the years, that's how it has the cost of those raw materials and packed materials have been passed on to you. And that typically is done across the product categories and across the industry. At the same time, I mean, there are other methods to absorb those costs from procurement perspective. There are ways to hedge against such variabilities, where you can go ahead and do some forward booking. All of those methodologies are there in place. But of course, if something abrupt comes into the picture, I mean, some of it you absorb, some of it you pass on. So it's not true that the prices are stable. It's always passed on to the consumers, and some of it is absorbed.
And you also do product substitution. So let's say you take palm in soap. So you have basically crude palm oil, palm kernel oil, palm fatty acids distillate. Depending on how prices move, we might change our blends to have a cheaper blend. Or let's say you have glycerin and sorbitol. Both of them are humectants. Depending on how prices move, you could change. Okay, the other things could be, let's say, starches and binders. There are multiple sources of starch. You have corn, you have tapioca, you have synthetically formulated starches, all of it. So at the end of the day, it's about how do you manage fluctuation. More importantly, how do you forecast pricing changes in a manner where you do not need to take a sudden reactive pricing input, which kind of fluctuates your prices up or down.
So, Pritam, Pradeep, one final question. What is the one piece of advice that you would want to leave the students with? I mean, in the coming 2 or 3 months, they're going to get a lot of advices from a lot of different people. But what would be your final 2 cents for them? We can start with Pritam and then we can.
I'll keep it very simple. The one single point learning is maximize your exposure. Maximize it as much as you can. Try out new things, try out new responsibilities, get into committees, maybe get into 2 committees, you never know. Be experimental with it. But I mean, the courses that you are selecting, don't just put yourself that I have to do this and be rigid about it. Be experimental. I mean, with time and age by your side, try as many things as you can. And what happens is that the learning curve, if you had heard about it, it's an S curve. which gets shortened when you try a lot of things. I mean, you get exposure to so many things, you gain perspectives, and that is how you grow. So that's what one should always aspire to at this stage, and maybe a very longish and further ahead also. So you would have heard, I'm not sure if you have heard it already or not, careers are like marathons. I mean, you have around 30, 35 years or maybe longish, who know, by the time you come to the circle, how long will the retirement age be? I do not know. Whether you will be entrepreneurs leading your companies till 80s or 90s, you never know. So careers are like marathons. So don't shy away at the beginning of it from trying out different things. Don't say no to things. Maybe go ahead and experiment. That's my small bit to it.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, enjoy your life. This is the moment. Keep your eyes and ears open. Learn. Live life as it comes. Yeah. Don't get overtly stressed on, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. My friend is doing this, my friend is doing that. At the end of the day, each of you are individual. Focus on what you enjoy doing. Focus on that. That's what is important. Everything else will follow. Thank you.
Great.